Welcome. This video is part of the Texas Education Agency's House Bill 3906 series and will cover an overview of the new STAR item types. In 2019, House Bill 3906 was passed by the 86th Texas Legislature. House Bill 3906 continuously improves the state of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness, or STAR, through multiple transformative changes. One of these changes involves the developing new item types to reduce the number of multiple choice items to no more than 75% of the test. The goals for these item types are to engage the students in a more interactive and authentic way. In this video, we will cover the House Bill 3906 limit on multiple choice items, proposed item types under consideration, stakeholder feedback that has been collected to date, and the timeline for implementation. We will end the preview of the different item types that are currently under consideration. House Bill 3906 requires TEA to limit multiple choice items to no more than 75% of the test. In order to ensure that 25% of the test is not multiple choice, the agency has defined a multiple choice item as an item in which the student is tasked with selecting one correct response from a set, typically of 4, possible responses provided. With the input of educators, the agency is in the process of determining which new item types will be used. As new item types are developed, the agency is thoughtfully considering which item types are a good fit to assess each content area appropriately. For example, the drag and drop item type is appropriate for math, science, and social studies, but not for reading language arts. This chart shows the current development of new item types for each of the content areas. A link to the Texas My Pearson support page is on the right side of the screen. This website allows access to the sample items. The landing page provides a table with a brief description of the item types and the applicable content areas. As decisions are made on the STAR redesign, the table on the My Pearson support page will be updated accordingly. Samples of proposed new STAR item types are available for viewing and feedback at the website on the screen. TEA encourages students, teachers, and parents to view these sample items. The specific goals for all the new item types are that they engage students with a wide variety of interactive high-interest items, allow students to more effectively demonstrate proficiency of the standard in an active way, assess more content in fewer items, assess different levels of thinking from the students, provide teachers more specific, actionable data measuring the student's level of understanding, and positively impacting instruction and ultimately student learning. Focus groups for the new item types began in the summer of 2020. After reviewing the proposed item types, the majority of educators agree that these item types will allow students to better demonstrate their knowledge and will impact teachers' instructional design and planning. A brief description of each item type is shown on the right. The data collected from the focus groups indicate that educators have a positive view of the new item types. The chart on the left summarizes feedback from all educators. The graphic on the right is broken down by the 4 foundation content areas of math, reading language arts, science, and social studies. Since House Bill 3906 is comprised of many pieces relating to this assessment, this timeline outlines some of the work required to implement all pieces of the STAR redesign. The Texas Education Agency will continue to gather feedback from stakeholders as this work continues. As you can see, full implementation of the STAR redesign is scheduled for the 22-23 school year. Prior to this implementation, the new item types will be field tested during the 21-22 school year. In addition to field testing, new blueprints for the assessment will be developed to reflect the changes. Other activities related to the transition to an online assessment are outlined in this timeline. At this point, we're going to go to a preview of each of the new assessment item types. The first item type are the multi-select items. This item type is proposed for all of the content areas. In this item type, the student is asked to select all of the answers that are appropriate for the question. In this example from Reading Language Arts, you'll see the directions for select 2 correct answers. During this demonstration, we're going to focus on the functionality of the item, not necessarily which answers we think would be correct. So if I choose A and B, and then I think C might be correct, you'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, I get an orange box that indicates I can only select a maximum of 2 choices, and it did not let me select choice C. If I want to select choice C, I will need to deselect A or B, and then I can select C. The next item type we will explore are the drag and drop items. This item type is proposed for math, science, and social studies. Drag and drop items can take on several different forms. The student could be asked to move an answer into a box that's in a sentence, a table, or a graphic organizer. In this particular example from social studies, we have 4 characteristics of a government plan, and then 2 different plans for the students to put these characteristics underneath. So when I grab one of these, I can put it in either box, and you'll notice they both highlight blue, showing that this particular box could go into either column. I can move these into wherever I think they need to go. They can have a different number of items under each column, or if I think that those are balanced with 2 and 2, I can do that as well. You'll notice that the boxes disappear once they are moved into a column, and that indicates that that answer choice is only used once. In examples for math, such as where students are creating a pictograph, you may have the picture, once it's moved, show up again, indicating that they can use that picture more than once in their pictograph. The next item type is the inline choice, and this item type is proposed for math and social studies. Inline choice is another way of saying we have drop-down menus. In this particular example from social studies, we have 2 different drop-down menus within the same item. In this particular drop-down menu, we have 2 different acts for them to choose from, Espionage Act or the Selective Service Act. So I'll select one, and then when I move to the next box, I have 3 options, religion, speech, or assembly. So I just pick the one that I think might be correct. The drop-down menus, as you can see, can have different numbers of options for the students to choose from. It's possible that items can be like this one, where there's more than one drop-down menu, or it could be that there is one single drop-down menu for the entire item. The next item type is text entry. This item type is proposed for math, science, and reading language arts. The text entry items require the student to enter either words or numbers to answer the question. For math and science, these item types would replace the griddable items that are currently on the paper version of the STAR. In this particular example for science, we have a picture of an electron cloud model, and then I have characteristics of the elements. The student could use their reference material of the periodic table, and they can just click in the box and then begin entering whatever numbers they believe would be correct. The next item type is the hotspot. This item type is proposed for math, science, and social studies. Hotspot items have answers that students can select by clicking on word or words or potentially numbers. In this particular example from 5th grade science, we have a weather map and that shows a front moving across the United States. The question asks the student to select 2 cities on the map to experience colder temperatures if the front continues to move. You'll notice in the question itself, it indicates that there are 2 correct answers. However, the directions just say to select the correct answers. It does not give a number. You'll notice all of the pieces that are linked as a hotspot have a blue box. And when I click on one of those, it highlights it and turns it dark blue. I can click on several. If I click on a third one, even though I'm only supposed to pick 2, this particular example does not give me the warning orange box at the top. So that warning orange box is something that we could include with the item, or it could be something that's left off. This will work the same way in that I can click it and deselect it if I choose to. The next item type is hot text. This particular item type is proposed for social studies and reading language arts. Hot text items are similar to the hotspot items. However, the difference is that the student is expected to select an entire phrase to answer the question. You'll notice in this example from social studies that we have several phrases that are put in a box. And as you can see, when I go over the top of them, they highlight. When I click on it, it highlights it. So that would be an answer choice I select. My directions say select all the choices that correctly answer the question. And so it doesn't tell me how many I need to select. If I think all of these, I can start selecting, but this particular one has that orange box that gives me the warning of, oh, just pick 2. So if I want to change that, deselect and then reselect a new one. The next item type is multi-part, and this item type is proposed for science, social studies, and reading language arts. Multi-part items contain 2 multiple choice items where the answer to part B depends on what the student selected for part A. In this particular item from Reading Language Arts, we have a reading passage about a caterpillar's tail. And they can read their passage, go to part A, and they direct them to paragraph 14. What's most likely the reason the author includes the caterpillar talking to itself. I have choices, I make a selection, and when I go to part B, which sentence from the story best supports what I picked for an answer on part A. So part B's answer is dependent upon part A. The next item type we'll look at are the graphing items. Graphing is specific to mathematics, and we have several different types of graphing items to demonstrate. This particular graphing item is kind of like a slider where they're creating bar graphs, and these items are appropriate for the lower grades according to the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, or TEKS, for the course. This example from grade 3 shows a table where we have colors of shirts and the number of shirts sold by that color. I have little gray bars for me to create my bar graph. So for blue, I'm going to slide it all the way over to 30. Green, you'll notice, is 17, and my x-axis has multiples of 5. But I have small gray marks in between each of those that allow this bar to snap to the individual gray lines and allows me to do pieces that are not necessarily marked on that particular x-axis. The next type of graphing item is going to be the point graph, and we have 2 different ways the point graph could be used. This particular example is from grade 5, and I'm asked to locate 1 point on the quadrant 1 of this coordinate grid. And so I go to 5, 2, and I select it and click it. As you can see, each of these intersection lines are going to be a hotspot that wherever I click, that's where my point will appear. If I don't want my point there, I can click another spot and it moves, or I can click and I can drag my point to wherever I want it to go. Another type of point graph item is where we are graphing lines. And this particular example from grade 8 is wanting me to plot 2 points to create a line with a slope that represents Carl's rate. So Carl is running 2 miles in 20 minutes. So for my time, I've got 20 minutes, and I'm going to go 2 miles. And here's my first point. Okay, if I'm going to go to my next one, I'm going to put one right here. You'll notice that the line automatically appears. If I decide I want to change my point, then again, just like the first one, I click again and my point will move, or I can click and drag and move it to where I would like it to go. The next type of graphing item is one that's appropriate for Algebra 1, and this is called the solution set. I have an inequality that I need to graph, and you'll notice I do have all 4 quadrants available. And my first thing is to select where the line will go. And in the same way we just saw on the point graph item is we're going to click on a couple of points wherever we think it needs to go, and a line automatically appears. The solid line is going to be the default line. Because this is an inequality item, I could possibly need a dash line. I would then have to pick and choose which one I feel would be most appropriate. When I click on solution set, my entire coordinate grid becomes a hotspot. So this is where I would shade the section that I think would be most appropriate. If I feel like the entire grid is part of the solution set, I do have the option of selecting the entire grid. If I don't like it, I click it and it goes away. If I then decide that my line is not in the correct place, I can move it, but I have to select graph. And then as in similar items, I just move my point where I want it to go. And then I have to click solution select again so that I can select the piece that I want to include in my solution. The next item type is the match table grid. And this item type is proposed for math, reading language arts, and social studies. In this particular example from English 1, you will notice that we have a passage for the students to read, and then their question is that they need to look at the quotations from the article that support the idea that the journey was difficult and which ones support that the journey was dangerous. So I have 4 quotes in my table, and then I have 2 columns with options for choices. In the first row, my quote is, "The Nile is the longest river in the world." And so I have to make a decision, is this supporting that the journey was difficult or that the journey was dangerous? And then I'm going to select one of those options. You'll notice that I cannot select both of them. Once I select one, the other one would disappear. I go to my next quote on the next row, and then I have the same decision to make. Which one of these 2 columns does it actually support? And then I make my selection. I would have 4 rows in this particular table, so that means I have 4 possible answers that I need to select, 1 for each row of the table. The next item type is equation editor, and this type is proposed for math only. Equation editor is similar to a constructed response item that is proposed for the other content areas. This item type allows the student to enter an equation, expression, or inequality into the answer box. So for this particular item, we are given a situation. We have the total cost of milk is greater than the total cost of 2 gallons of milk and 1 dozen of eggs, and we have to write the inequality to represent the situation. You'll notice I have a blank box, and I also have a tool palette. This particular example shows the entire tool palette that is available for equation editor items. Since this example is for grade 8, some of these tools are not appropriate for grade 8, such as the cube root. So that part would not work for students here. The student would simply begin typing in whatever numbers they feel are appropriate, whatever symbols they want. I can use my keyboard, or I can go to one of these and type in the numbers that I think I need. If I don't like my answer at all, I can use the trash can to clear every bit of it. I can undo something, redo something. If I think a fraction is needed, I can put this in and I can type in 4 tab 5 to show 4/5 if that's the fraction that I need. I also have the ability to put in a mixed number. Again, the student would type in numbers, but they must hit tab in between each one of these selections of a number. If I don't, then what will happen is it thinks that I'm trying to put 65 instead of 6/5. The next item type is the short constructed response items. This item type is proposed for science, social studies, and reading language arts. In this particular example from reading language arts, the student reads the article on the red crab invasion, and then they go to their question, which is, what is one positive aspect of the red crab migration to the Christmas island? And they have to support their answer with evidence from the article. They have a box to write their answer, and they have several tools available. They can use bolded, italicized, or underlined text. They can also include bulleted lists or numbered lists. And then for editing, they could undo, redo, or use the spell check. This particular item type will likely have a character count. This particular example shows 1,000. However, this is just a sample item. We have not yet determined what that number would be. We are still getting feedback from teachers and doing some research on what would be most appropriate. But as I type in my answer, you'll notice that the character count goes down. So that way I can keep track of how many characters I have left to provide my response. Depending on the grade level and the content area, this response could be as short as a sentence, or it could be 1 or more paragraphs. TEA continues to provide opportunities for teachers to participate in focus groups and other educator committees. If you would like to participate in future educator committees, please visit the website on the left. If you would like to keep up with the latest news from TEA, including information about the STAR redesign, you can sign up for a variety of newsletters using the link on the right. If you would like to learn more about each component of the new STAR redesign, please view our additional videos. If you have any questions about the 75% multiple choice cap for the STAR redesign, you can contact the Curriculum Standards and Student Support Division or the Student Assessment Division at the email addresses you see on the screen. You can also send your questions to the TEA Student Assessment Help Desk.